I have my family thanks to tennis. I have my education thanks to tennis. I have, my entire life due to tennis. I think what saved my career and maybe even life at some point is having that balance. That is why I got to my career high when I was working with this guy.
Very, very good at that.
Yeah.
All right, welcome to another podcast of Alotta Racket, where we create a lot of racket, not just tennis racket, by the way. On our podcast, we're our host, myself, Roger, Coach Slinger Smith. On my left, Coach Victor Troy Collins. To his left, the one and only Terry T-dawg Davis. And we're missing one this week, and for good reason.
Yes.
The Easy E. Not to be here now.
Shout out Easy.
Not to be here now because he's taking on the head coach, the assistant coach job now at Boise State. A big opportunity for him, and he's very excited, and he just wants to send his blessing here as we go on with this podcast. Anyway, this is where we have honest conversations about life experiences throughout our journey, okay? Where we bring on experts in the sports and entertainment world to talk about what it takes to not only be a champion, but also how to create champions, both on and off the court. Each episode, we have new topics and bring on acclaimed guests to share their expertise and insights on developing top young athletes to achieve success in sports, and not only sports, but also life. And today, we have a special guest. Someone I'm very familiar with, someone that I've known for a long time, and just brings great joy that she just accepted, to be a guest on this podcast with, I know she's very busy now, being a mom and everything through retirement. But anyway, this ex-player has won 7 singles and 5 doubles titles on the professional ITF tour. She reached her best WTA singles ranking in the world of 68. And peaked at 107 in the WTA doubles ranking. So just is no joke. She's a graduate of the 2010 from Crossroads High School in Santa Monica, California.
Local girl.
Yeah.
Local girl.
And then went on to be a Stanford standout tennis star, where she was recently inducted this year, I believe, right? In their Athletic Hall of Fame. Congratulations to you. Stanford.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I thought she went to UCLA.
Oh, no, don't even say that around Nicole. We're going to get to that. No. She is also known as a social guru. Now, I remember when I was with her on the tours, she would always post all this stuff. And I was not a social guru at all. I didn't know anything but social media and stuff. And she would always tease me. People were like, you need to get with the times. I was like, one day, and here I am, believe it or not.
Here you are.
But she is so much more than a social media guru, okay? And we're going to find this out throughout the podcast, by the way. But let me graciously introduce our very special guest today, Nicole Gibbs Brody. I got through that in there.
Wow.
AKA, and by the way, AKA Gibbsy, because I will be calling her Gibbsy throughout this podcast.
Yeah, I actually never changed the name, so I'm still Gibbsy.
Oh, no. We talked about that a long time ago, Nicole. Now, you got to get with it now. Yeah. Welcome and thank you so much for being here. Let's start without hesitation, Nicole Gibbsy. You're junior tennis. I know you say you're from Cleveland. You were born in Cincinnati. Now, being from the Ohio State University, Columbus is right in the middle of both. Let's talk about Cleveland. How did you get started into tennis?
Well, first of all, thank you for the very beautiful introduction. I'm still reeling. I'm like, I don't know if I'm all those things, especially not social guru, but we'll get to that later. I spent half of my childhood in Cleveland, Ohio, and then the second half in California, so I consider myself a little bit of a hybrid. I'm now a California girl, but for a while it was Ohio through and through. It took me a long time to make that transition. And I honestly owe a lot of my early development and early tennis career to my days in Cleveland. You know, you hear Cleveland and you don't think like sports or tennis powerhouse, but actually we had a group of like 10 or 15 juniors around that time who were just pushing each other, having a lot of fun with it, and had really good families. And I think we all kind of just were practicing with each other, playing a lot of competitive matches and practice matches, and just getting each other a lot better at tennis. So I feel very fortunate to be from where I'm from. I don't think I would have had the tennis career that I had without that beginning in Cleveland.
And Cleveland is the rock and roll capital of the world. You into rock and roll or what, man?
I had a very awkward middle school dance at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
There you go. Now, you started out with your dad, too. I would say he was a big part of your junior career. Big Paul. Got to give a shout out to Paul Gibbs, my man.
Shout out Paul Gibbs.
Who I respect very much. Oh, I love that man. And he started with you really focusing on movement and consistency. And at one point in time, I read where you guys hit 1,000 balls in a row. And how old were you then?
I can't have been much more than like maybe 11 at that time. We were obsessed with consistency, and when I say we, it was pretty much my dad, and I was along for the ride because I was 11. But yeah, we had this routine that we would go through that was just focused on discipline, consistency, making tennis balls, and we would show up and we would go to 100 level 10, which meant, you know, if you missed at 9, you were back to the previous like 10, whatever that was. So if you missed at 27, you were back to 20. If you missed at 48, you were back to 40. And increasingly over time, the rules got harder and harder. So we would go to 100 level 20, and then 100 level 25, 100 level 50, 100 just in a row. You just had to make 100. If you lost on 99, that was like tough for you. And so the 1,000 ball rally was just part of our warm up. We were doing our 100 level 20 or whatever it was, and my dad was like, oh my gosh, she hasn't missed to 100. And then there was 200, and there was 300, and there was 400, and we got to 1,000. He picked up the ball and we left. It was a 20-minute practice that day, so I was like, that was a win-win. I didn't miss a ball. We got to 1,000, and we went home.
That's awesome. How do you think that helped you?
Well, I mean, just a foundation of just like knowing that I could have the mental stamina to do something like that, and I could pull that out in a match when I needed it. It was just like, you know, at the end of the day, especially in juniors, when players are a little bit less disciplined, you just have that to fall back on. It's just, I'm gonna hit 100 balls and make you miss.
No, I know, that's awesome. I know Coach Troy preaches that a lot with his juniors, huh? I know you have a lot to say about that, consistency. When you coach Jeffrey Doss and Kevin Kim and those guys.
If you miss, you do push-ups, or you run. So it's a little different, right? Oh, if you miss, you do push-ups. But that's pretty 1,000 balls. That's good stuff there. We call that shot tolerance level. Developing your shot tolerance level. That's important. And then recognizing your opponent's shot tolerance level. Going out there, charting that. You know, you chart it, right?
Right.
Get a graphic description of, you know, how many balls that they're getting in play. You know, I used to count it out when you were on the tour. These guys are having 7, 8, 9 balls. You know. And then it didn't matter what the point was or scenario; they'd miss. You know, so that's pretty good. 1,000 balls.
Yeah. Do you preach that daily? Or?
But I want to ask you, do you not? So you're from Cleveland. I mean, you didn't bleed like Michigan and Ohio State and that football. Your dad, was he a football fan?
Yes, he was a Buckeye fan for sure.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I don't think I stuck around quite long enough to be obsessive, but I definitely took my Cleveland sports fanship to LA and did not defect to the Lakers. I was always a Cavs fan, for better or for worse.
What about the Browns or Bengals?
Yeah, Browns, but you know, it's a tough job being a Browns fan.
So you started with your dad, you built that foundation, you had great success. I'm sorry, you had, how many gold balls do you have?
I actually
Oh,
don't
you
know.
lost count. You lost count after what was your last count?
I'm really not sure. I'm not sure. I had a handful, at least in the 12 and 14s. I think there was a doubles one somewhere in there.
That's being very.
What class? What class? Juniors?
In high school, I was in 93.
93? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
She was with the Sloanes.
Were you on one of the national coaches during that time?
Sure was.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Exciting.
Oh yeah,
Exciting years.
Well, I'll tell you what. Nicole moved to train here. Well, her dad came. Right, you can talk more about that. He came and was a coach and a teacher at Crossroads. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. And they moved here, and Nicole actually came in right when I came in at Carson as a national coach in 2003, somewhere around that 2003.
I would have been. I came around 07. So you might
07.
have beaten me
So I was
by a
there
few years.
maybe just before.
Yeah.
I was with the boys at the time, the
Yeah.
boys program at the time. But I remember when Nicole came. Oh yeah, Wade McGuire was
Were
the.
you part
Yes.
of the Fed Cup, the team that won the Fed Cup?
That's another story.
Uh-oh.
Nicole, were you a part of that Fed Cup?
I don't know. Was I?
The junior Fed Cup. Said, what's that?
I got benched in the finals.
Wow.
I was technically our one player, but our three player was Sloane, so you got to play her in the singles for sure. So in retrospect, probably a good coaching decision to play the 2 and 3 in the final, but I was having a hard time on the bench.
I sat up there with you. I was not the coach, by the way, but I sat up there with you, Nicole. You were.
I was probably like sitting there crying.
And they gave us a heart attack in those matches.
Yeah, it was tight.
It was tight. It was against France.
Yeah.
Mladonovich and so forth, yeah.
Yeah,
we
that
win
was
that?
tough. We did.
We did, yeah. The girls won. My boys lost.
Boys lost.
That's the
Yeah.
first time ever you guys won the Fed Cup, right?
Well, no, this was 14 and unders. Then there was the 16
Yeah.
and unders. Yeah. But you see, the 93s were so good, they were feeding up to the older girls. Because when I coached the Fed Cup team, the junior Fed Cup team, it was a year ahead of the 93s. And only one 93 was Sloane, not Nicole. But we had Christina McHale, and Christiane, they were all top 300
Yeah, that's a
at the
great
time,
team.
you know. Now, I got to tell you this. Nicole, before she went to college, you won your first $10,000 or $15,000 tournament at what age?
14.
14 years old.
Yep. Mexico City. Pays to make balls there.
On the dirt?
Yeah.
No, it was hard court.
What?
Oh, was it hard?
Hard court, Mexico City, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I also
I
had
had
food
a,
poisoning that week.
At 14, that's
14.
unbelievable.
What was your dad coaching you?
My dad was coaching me, but at that tournament, I think I had started working with Wade at that
With the
point.
USTA?
But I'm not sure. And it was actually just me and my mom that week. She was
Well,
just
Wade
kind of
was a
chaperoning
good
me.
dude.
What's that?
Wade was a good dude.
Yeah. Wade is a good guy. But that's impressive, you know, to win.
What
a 15.
about how'd you do in San Diego? 16s and 18 hard courts.
Oh, man. I haven't thought about this stuff in a while. I think,
They were in San Diego then too, right?
yeah,
You
I
guys
want to
went
say,
down there?
I want to say I finaled and lost to
wow.
Lauren Davis in my up year, so when I was 18. I think when I was 17, I also finaled or was close. Maybe lost to Christina McHale or something like that. I'm not sure about that one. I'm sure about the
Build up for
Lauren
those
Davis.
tournaments are so intense, huh?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of pressure with the
Yeah.
U.S. Open wild card on the line.
Yeah.
But it was good to get a taste for that before NCAAs. So I think that probably helped.
So at the time, you know, most of the girls at the USTA in high performance, elite players like Nicole were, you know, high school was being phased out to homeschool.
Right.
But Nicole, you chose to stay in regular school. How did that come about?
Man, actually, like, I was talking to someone recently about this, and I think, like, throughout the whole process, it was always so obvious to me. It was like, yeah, I'm going to stay in school because I love school. I love the balance it brings my life. I kind of like need something in my life that's not just tennis. Like when I get too wound up on just the tennis, I tend to freak out and not play as well. So I kind of always had that intuition for myself. But there was a considerable amount of pressure kind of always applied on me, particularly by the USTA, saying, we're not sure how serious you are about your tennis. Wow. And I'm like, how much more serious do I need to be than winning national titles?
Why would they say that?
Because I wasn't investing the time at the level that other athletes were who were my age, right? I only had a certain amount of hours in the day. And if I was spending...
because you went to school.
Half of them at school.
Stupidity, huh?
So did they try to discourage you from school?
Homeschool.
That was my impression, yes.
How did your dad feel about that?
I think confused, because his view was always that school was really important,
right.
And he also saw for me that it was important to my sense of balance. But at the same time, he constantly kind of felt like he was in over his head and should be receiving input from these wiser tennis folks. And so there was always this tension of, him and my mom definitely respecting my decision, but every now and then being like, are you sure you don't want to homeschool? It really seems like, all the powers that be are really wanting this for you. So there was kind of that constant tension surrounding it. And I actually skipped my sophomore year in high school, kind of as a result of that pressure. I was like, okay, I only need one more English credit in order to essentially skip a year because I was ahead in math and science. And so we went ahead and did that, so I would at least graduate a year early, with the idea being that I could then take a gap year if I wanted to play professionally. And then at that point I was like, bye, I'm going to Stanford at 17.
What was your GPA?
In high school?
Yeah.
4.6.
I think it was over a 4. I think it was a 4.2.
But Crossroads is very unique. Shout out to Crossroads and all my students at Crossroads. Fine school. I've got a lot of kids that go to Crossroads.
Yeah, no, I loved it there. And my dad taught there, so I was like the teacher's kid.
So was it hard for your dad to, here you go?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because he's put a lot of work in on you.
He begged me to go to UCLA.
Really?
Yeah.
Why UCLA?
We were in a fight on signing day with Stanford. I was signing on the dotted line and we were fighting.
What was that at UCLA that was impressive for him to have you go there? What was
It was 20 minutes away.
Oh, jeez. He didn't want to be close to his baby.
Yeah, of course.
He was going to come find me, make sure I wasn't out of frat.
Oh, were you trying to get away?
That may have been part of it. No, but to be fair, even from the time I was 10, okay, so if it doesn't come across immediately, I'm a big nerd, and I used to have these t-shirts from my aunt in Boston that said Destination Harvard University. I was obsessed with my studies. School bus. I'd wear it to school. So embarrassing. And when I was 12, I was like, hey Dad, how's Harvard's tennis team? And he was like, they're good, but it's D3. Right. And I was like, oh, that's not going to work.
Wow.
And I was like, where can I go that is the best combination of school, education, and sports? And the first, word out of his mouth was Stanford. I didn't hear anything else. I think Duke was also on that list and a couple other schools. UCLA was probably on that list too, but I heard Stanford and I was like, that's where I'm going.
So Stella and Rance never came after you?
We had a coffee meeting once. They actually never came on that strong in the recruiting process, so that made my life a lot easier. Not that Lily and Frankie did either. They're very passive recruiters, so I had to kind of come to them. But it made my life easier that it wasn't a hard press by UCLA.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What was so impressive about Stanford?
I mean, I loved everything about my experience at Stanford. It was just so cool being around.
Initially that you wanted to go there.
Oh,
what was appealing to you?
Honestly,
was it tennis, academics?
Yeah, all of it.
All of it.
I think you get that big school feeling without necessarily being at a huge school, and just that combo of great education, great sports, great energy, California, perfect weather. But again, I don't know that I would have arrived at that on my own. It was literally like, you know, I was 10, my dad was a really big deal to me, and he said Stanford, so I'm like, all right, I'm going to Stanford.
At what point did you come out of your nerd state?
Never.
Say now.
Raj will tell you that.
Well, there was more to Stanford than just the tennis and academics too. Now, don't forget, this is where she found her boo, Jack the man.
That's true. I found
And
him at a
now
frat
look at
party.
them living happily ever after with a newborn. So there was more to Stanford than just the tennis.
When did you find him?
I had met him, I guess, a couple times before I was like fully aware of it, like including I guess on my recruiting trip I met him, but I actually didn't remember the interaction, but he said he had remembered. And then during Rush, I rushed for a sorority, which is like something that you can do at Stanford, not a lot of other schools. If you're on sports teams, we were encouraged to do Greek life and kind of just do everything we would normally do. And so I was rushing, and my in my sorority set me up with Jack essentially on like a friend date to like get to know the guys in his frat, because that was like really important, right? You got to know all the guys in the frat. And so we had met again then, but there was like, you know, it was kind of ships passing in the night. And then third time lucky, we like kind of ran into each other at like an event one night, and we just like really hit it off and never looked back.
Wow. Jack was the man, though. Don't sleep. Jack was the man.
What was Jack doing? What is his background?
He was studying product design. He also is a freak athlete, but was not an athlete at Stanford. He was just more like jack of all trades. You know, had done some like pole vaulting and track in high school. He played football, even though he was 4'11" and 90 pounds his freshman year
Fast.
in high school. Fast little guy, yeah. And then he played a lot of soccer too. And by the time I knew him, he was really into surfing. So he was a very athletic guy, but like not on any sports team at Stanford. And we just got to know each other through kind of the Greek life.
You know, Nicole, he must have had quite a resume for your daddy. That's a hell of a resume. Because dads look for resumes.
Yes.
You know? They not trying to get a baby up, you know?
Well, I actually have a really funny story for you about their first introduction that I think you'll really like. So my dad's intense, and if you've met him, you know that. But he's an intense guy. He's definitely a little bit of a shotgun dad in terms of like meeting boyfriends and stuff. So the first time I brought Jack back to LA from Stanford, he was staying with us, you know, sleeping on the couch respectfully. And my dad says to Jack, like, oh, I know you're into like running and stuff. I'm training for a marathon right now, and I have my 18-mile run today. Jack, who has never run more than 5 miles, is like, no, I'm good off that. And my dad was like, do you want to, I'll do 2 loops of 9 miles. Do you want to run that with me? The first 9. And Jack is like, okay, I've never done that, but like, sounds like a cool challenge. Like, let's go out and run 9 miles. And so my dad starts running, and he's you know, talking about his loop, and he's like, all right, this is the point where we turn back if we're going to do 2 loops of 9 miles. How are you feeling? And Jack's like, I'm feeling good. My dad doesn't loop. He does the entire 18 miles. This boy has never run more than 5 miles in his entire life. He came back disabled. Like, I've never seen someone hurting so bad. He was like limping, like the sole of his shoe was falling off. He looked like he had like seen a ghost. Like, there's no color left. I was like, Dad, what did you do?
You gotta give him props. He didn't stop.
He didn't stop.
That was the challenge. That was the challenge.
And
so
then
after that, what does Daddy say?
After that, Dad was definitely a fan, and Jack signed up to train for his first marathon.
Wow. Wow. Shout out to Paul, man. Paul, that's my man.
How did Mom feel about everything?
Oh, Mom was on board. She's like, this guy's great. He's so nice.
What's your dad's background?
My dad's background? Yeah. He grew up in Northeast Ohio. His dad was a minister at the time, and his mom was a school teacher. And he actually has kind of a crazy life story. So he was kicked in the head by a horse when he was 3 years old and was in a coma for like multiple days. And when he came out of the coma, fortunately he did, basically all of the nurses and doctors told him, like, you can't have this happen again because you won't wake up if it happens a second time, like if you have any head trauma. Right. So he went to kindergarten in a hockey helmet. He couldn't play any contact sports growing up. And that was kind of the reason that he ended up playing tennis. He liked other sports actually a little bit better, but his dad played tennis and kind of like convinced him to play because it was one of the less dangerous sports for him. So very intense kind of origin story.
Wow, that's awesome. And so once again, you know, not the normal way of staying in regular school, then you go to college, which was a great choice, I thought, you know, and where you had some great accolades. Nicole became one of the most successful college players ever to play in college, probably to maybe a Stevie Johnson, who won 4 straight years of NCAAs or something like that, and all. But Nicole, as a freshman, got to the semifinals of singles. Did you win doubles that year?
No.
Freshman, sophomore, she won it singles. Junior year, she won singles again before she turned pro. So, great job in college. I mean, really, really good job.
Thank you.
And go ahead.
The one thing from that that I think is actually the most important my junior year is when we got that team title, and that's what I was sticking around for. I was like, I'm not leaving the school until we've gotten a team title, and we finally got it that year.
Who was number one for UCLA at the time?
Whoa.
Robin? Because you guys Robin Anderson, and Jen Brady was second. Robin had your number?
Robin had my number. I was shaking in my boots every time.
Until pros?
No, she cleaned my clock a couple times.
Until 2017.
Correct.
Stopped playing.
Then there was one time. I beat her one time. I finally got my revenge, but it took a long time. She had my number.
But no, great college career. I mean, you know.
They didn't offer you any money? Nobody came to you after the first time you won NCAAs? Nobody offered you $1 million up front to sign or anything like that?
What world are you living in? $1 million contract out of college? No, it's not happening. With that said, there was, again, a lot of pressure after my sophomore year when I won the...
But listen, Gibbs was named the 2012 recipient of the prestigious Honda Sports Award. You know, this award is presented annually to the top woman athlete in 12 NCAA sanctioned sports. And you won that, didn't you?
Yeah, that was really cool.
That was like the most prestigious thing you could probably get.
No agency came to you about turning pro?
I mean, there were like... You know, there was like chatter, but there was nothing like so compelling that it was.
So when you win NCAAs, you don't get wild cards into any events?
You get a wild card in the US Open, and that was a big deal.
Okay,
so that was at the time.
What happened?
Yeah.
Let's go to the US Open.
So sophomore year, one I wish I won US Open. One NCAA got the berth into US Open, and thank you. That was a real conversation about like, do I take the $50,000 check? Because I'm not guaranteed that if I go back, I'm going to win it again and have that $50,000 start. But I think, you know, the lack of the team title and, you know, no super compelling offer.
And that money can't go into an escrow account until you decide.
Nope.
That's
Sure can't.
No.
That's just the worst thing in the whole world.
It's like criminal because it forces... Not in my case so much, but if you have someone who is really lacking in privilege, who has that option, like they almost are
you
forced
earned
to take
it. I mean, even as an amateur, that money should have went into some sort of escrow account. And when you that's just horrible.
Yeah, I agree.
You couldn't even donate that money to your favorite charity.
No, which is also silly, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a change.
This stuff.
It's changed.
Okay.
Yeah, now you can.
Now you can take money. Now you can take money.
The retro.
You can take money.
You know, you need to go back and say, "Hey, there's a check for me."
So that $50,000, was that a First, second round?
First round.
But you get your per
First round.
diem
First
too.
round.
First round. And I had won the doubles that year too, so there was probably an extra like 15 for first round doubles hanging on that as well. But again, I hadn't gotten the team title. There was no like compelling offer from an agency or
Now,
a
do you
sponsor.
go with your own private coach, or you NCAA say you had to have the college coach with you there, or by yourself?
I think I had the college team coach with me that summer, which is great. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah. No,
yeah, it was great.
Okay.
And I don't know.
If Stanford covered the tab, or if his expenses and per diems and all that.
Yeah. So USTA usually had like a summer collegiate arm essentially that would
Okay.
like travel with the players, which was really nice because they understood that we could not take the money, so
Good
you
stuff.
can't really be paying. Plus, you could take money up until your expenses. So
Right.
I'm not losing money to go play in the
Right,
U.S.
right,
Open. That would be like obviously ridiculous. But yeah.
Well, that's just horrible.
Who was your
couldn't
first
give
round
that check
match?
to your parents or something, huh? Just that,
I should know the answer to that. I actually cannot remember.
In your first round.
Did you
First round.
Not Kvitova.
No. Huh. I'm gonna Google that.
How were you feeling?
Soon as
How was your
convenient.
you?
That's
did you feel
wild.
like your dream had come? I mean, you're playing the U.S. Open. You win the NCAAs. You're on a high. How are you feeling? Do you feel confident, or is there even a notion of you doing well at the NCAAs? What's the mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I always played so well over those summers because you're playing on house money. You're not having the pressure of supporting yourself on tour because you can't take money past your expenses anyway. I had gotten so match tough from like, I'm sure it was like 50 matches during the course of the season, plus the end of NCAAs is like, you get like 12 matches within 2 weeks minimum.
Right.
And so I was always just having so much fun in that summer lead up. And there was a tournament at Stanford back in that era.
Still going.
Yeah, well, they brought it back this year as a
Yeah.
125, but previously it was like a premier level event, and I would always get a wild card as an athlete at Stanford into that event. So that was so fun. It brought that like college energy to like one of my tennis tournaments, like as a professional over the summer. So I think in those summers between sophomore and junior year, and then after junior year, as I was turning pro, I had already gotten my ranking to like 250, or in the neighborhood of there, which sounds crazy on only like a 3-month schedule, but I just had so much confidence, so much adrenaline. And yeah, I mean, being at the US Open, there's nothing that you dream of more as an athlete than that, so.
Back in the day, could you play all the pro tournaments, and if your ranking was at 2, you get in a lot of the tournaments, you don't accept the money, but now your ranking is still going up, and you're still in college.
Exactly.
And you're still maintaining a professional ranking,
Yep. Yeah.
Just can't take the money.
but you don't get the money.
Right. It's a lot. It's working 3-4 jobs is what it feels
Yeah.
like, because you're a full-time student.
Right.
And, I was trying to take that pretty seriously. I was a collegiate athlete. I was trying to dip my toes in the professional circuit, and sometimes those things were clashing with each other. It was like, I couldn't miss any more of this one lecture, or he was going to drop my grade by a letter, but I was in the semifinals, and what do you do, So a lot of talking to compliance
Right,
and
right.
trying to figure out how to jump through all the hoops. But it's definitely I would say the period of my, tennis career that I look back on maybe most fondly was like that period of time. It was just so exciting and so fun.
Now, did you win singles and doubles twice?
Singles and doubles my sophomore year, just singles my junior year.
Just singles junior.
Yeah.
Because the year you won singles and doubles,
Yeah.
did you beat your teammate in the finals?
Yeah. And it was
And your doubles partner?
it was wild. Yes.
Was she?
So
Did you play 1?
sorry.
Did you play number 1?
I had played number 1 this season, and the number 2 player was Mallory Burdett, who peaked at almost the exact WTA ranking that I did. So we were like incredibly well matched, but it was like a David and Goliath vibe. Like she was like this powerful ball striker, and like on days where she would play unbelievable, I had no prayer on the court with her. And she was having one of those days in Georgia in this final. We're playing in Athens, and she's up, I want to say 6-2, 4-1, 30 love.
Oof.
in the NCAA final, okay, my sophomore year. We're both vying for our first ever title. I think she was serving, and I think she may have also had 40-15 in that game.
Oof.
Battle it back, win in a breaker in the second set, tight third set, pull it out, win the match. That's a pretty hard bounce back.
Yes.
To then jump on the court an hour later. Honestly, to this day, it was one of the most impressive feats of like athletic maturity that I've ever seen for my partner to get herself back together. And I swear to God, she carried me in the doubles. She played unbelievable.
Wow.
Like her ball striking was perfect. It was like, she hadn't just like lived this like nightmare an hour before. So really, really incredible, actually.
Well, Mallory's a great girl. I mean,
Yeah.
I had the privilege of working a little bit with Mallory when she played doubles with Sloane at the end, and they won the U.S. Open Juniors. But again, that title, the title that you got was only the third. You were only the third player to achieve this ever. Did you know that?
I don't know that I knew that.
Ever in history
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
to achieve that accolade. Unbelievable.
Who were the other two?
Huh?
Who were the
Come on,
other
Slinger,
two?
did you do
I don't know who the other two. I
think-
just know Nicole. I just know Gibbsy, man. Gibbsy did it. Was one of three.
But you know,
I think Amber Liu at Stanford did it at one point.
That's Michael Chang's wife.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Amber Chang now.
Oh, Amber Chang. Oh, Amber Liu.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Amber Chang. Oh, yeah.
She
did it.
Yeah.
I think so.
Michael Chang's
That's
wife.
for some reason that's setting off a memory,
So
a deep
that's
memory.
so all Stanford, man. All Stanford.
Pretty cool.
That's crazy. And she's no typical just tennis player, too, by the way. I learned this later. All of her friends were not just tennis players, man. They were big football players, all playing in the NFL. Black football players. Look here, we're in Mexico, man, and these guys are down there doing some stuff. Next thing she goes, Coach, by the way, I got some friends coming over, so they might get a little rowdy on the tennis court, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't care, bring them on. Man, I saw these guys, man, they like this, puff. I'm like, damn. Then she's like, she had a day off, she's like, I'm gonna go on the boat. I'm like, okay. What am I gonna say? No.
Sounds right.
But those were her friends, man. That's the kind of person Nicole is, by the way. Just
Who
not
was
a
the quarterback
typical
when you were at Stanford?
Andrew Luck.
Yep.
luck. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
That was supposed to be trivia, but. Who had another great quarterback, number 7, who played for Stanford?
Elway.
That wasn't for you.
Oh, I'm
My
sorry.
husband would kill me for even pausing on that.
The only reason I know that is because they kicked our butt
Yes.
in the last minute. We were up by like 4, and he just ran down a touchdown to beat us. Killed our whole national championship spirit. So that's
Who is
how
Nicole
they
Gibbs? What makes you
Oh,
a
goodness.
special player when you were coming up?
I think when I was coming up, it was the level of discipline and in the words of one of my other coaches that I worked with back in the day, a willingness to go to dark places that few other players are willing to go.
This is true.
What does that mean? I want to know what that means.
I was familiar with and very comfortable with the feeling of suffering, and I was willing to suffer to win. And that was definitely true for a long time. I don't think that stayed true throughout my entire career,
Right.
but definitely in the juniors and through much of my early pro career even, I would say.
Where we from, and they call that a little dog in you.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
think we promote these great collegiate pro players enough, because what she has done is just incredible. And because they just focus on the so-called WTA stars, our great collegiate female champions don't get their recognition. That's what I got out of this. just
Well, they
that.
didn't before. I think
Yeah.
nowadays
It's changed.
it's changing,
Well, okay,
and it's changing
whatever,
because of
man.
people like Nicole,
Well,
who not only showed the world,
To-
but was a voice
Yeah.
for collegiate. Because this young lady here, let me tell you, we're gonna get into this. She is a voice. She's a voice for a lot of things out there,
That's
and
good.
has been a voice
That's good.
for
Because
women's rights.
I had another question. Were you in college? Did you have an opportunity to represent the United States in the Olympics?
No, never did.
Because it didn't come around during the time you were in school?
Honestly, even if it had, when I peaked at 68 in the world, I think I was like the 8th ranked female
So they're
American.
not taking collegians, they're taking pros.
Yeah, you take the top 4 ranked, regardless of collegiate, pro, anything. But I mean, it's tough when you got Venus and Serena kind of at the top of the game. You're looking at like 1 or 2 spots,
more
for
spots, yeah.
anyone else. And I was never even within spitting distance of that, even at my career high ranking.
That's funny because we're so geared to looking at world ranking instead of
Our great
the United
collegiates.
States.
Right.
And you said 8. You were the top 8 player in the United States.
See that's what I'm getting
You know?
at
I
right
think that's
there.
probably around where I peaked. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Because you get caught up in the world in 68 or 68. Okay, it
Yeah.
doesn't sound to some people, but you're a top ranked player.
Were they streaming matches when you played? Had they just gotten not then, huh?
It's like
Not like now.
on the edge. Like they were
Doggone it.
just starting to do some of
Yeah.
that. There used to be actually like decent NCAA coverage, like maybe in the few years before I went to school, but they had like lost their contracts with ESPN and stuff, so it was all pretty
So don't
dormant.
have those footages of those great matches that you played.
I have no idea if footage
Boy, you're
exists.
a dinosaur.
You got to ask Paul about that.
She's a dinosaur.
Paul would
like
have that.
us.
Paul got it.
Paul would have that
Paul-
stuff.
Oh, speaking of your man, your hubby, when I first met him, he was the first to have the JBL. Remember that? We had a little party at your house upstairs. And
Oh, yeah.
he brought the little boom box.
That was my gift. That was my gift from Nicole and Jack.
Oh, yeah, and he brought.
That was Alexa.
Yeah,
Oh, no way.
yeah,
That tracks.
yeah. He brought them. Yeah, really.
Wow, that's a good memory.
Yeah. But let me say, 68 was 8 when Nicole peaked at 8 in the U.S. When she peaked there. But there was a time in 68 might have been 4 or 5. Because I remember when Sloane got booted out of she was 5.
Right.
And if she had won a match at the French, she would have been 4 at around 60.
Right.
Because Venus and Vavar got in. So 60 at the time would have been right there, not 8.
So are they giving? So since her ranking was up there, when in college, did you get any other wild cards after that? After winning NCAAs,
Besides US Open.
besides US Open?
Yeah, I had a few early opportunities. I had a Stanford wild card. That was big, and I think I had a New Haven qualifying wild card. So I got a few opportunities right off the bat, and maybe a Cincinnati qualifying wild card as well. So I was definitely getting some opportunities. It felt a little bit like those opportunities were kind of on a timer. It was like, you're going to get them for 1 year, and then if you're not there,
See
you're
how
right
you
there.
do.
Which is crazy because, I was actually thinking about this recently. Like, I was reflecting on my career, and I had this, concept internally that I think I took in from other people's voices that was I was a late bloomer because I went to college. I actually got to 84 in the world when I was 21, which now sounds so young.
Yeah.
I heard a
I hate that
broadcaster.
language. And Roger and them used to promote that. Oh, well, you're a third year this, or you're late bloomer that. All that political jargon. I hated that.
Yeah, but wait, hold on. You got to understand.
Oh,
You got to
God,
understand
here we go.
and Nicole would attest to this. You have to understand the position the USTA is in, okay? Because they have a mission statement.
Okay.
Number one.
All right.
And the mission statement is clearly to produce the next Grand Slam champions. So when you go on a ladder of who's playing, that actually is where it comes in a little sticky. Because you have to give respect to what some players are doing, not just on potential. Because you get into problems when you say, "Oh, this person has potential, but
they're not winning.
they're not even in the top 10."
Not showing up.
Which happens.
Right.
So that becomes a little sticky Maybe they need to change the mission statement a little bit. I don't know, but that's where the USTA brings their money. With the
Yeah,
Grand Slam champions.
but there is so much inconsistency with that. Like, I'm not
I
going to
agree.
name names today, but
I agree.
there were certain players who were very clearly not going to win a Grand Slam, who were being given opportunities time and time again.
That's the
in a
issue.
sort of a like, you know, good girl feedback loop, which
Yes.
is like, that person doesn't cause us trouble,
Right.
you know, or any pushback, and, you know, I don't know, like, that sort of inconsistency made it really hard to swallow sometimes. Like, I agree with the general premise that you should be giving opportunities to young players who look really promising and really exciting. That's who needs it, right? Like, they need, like...
I don't believe in that. I believe that sports has defied age, race, religion, culture,
Right.
everything.
But that's as a
So to start
meritocracy.
putting
Wild
this,
cards
like,
are not a meritocracy,
yeah,
right?
so, but to put this on, oh, you got to be young. People, look, they didn't do enough for you. I don't care what they say. Here you are with these incredible accolades, and you're a great American champion, and you're in the traditional format of our great college institutions and winning the NCAAs and all of this embodied our great country, and then, they should have done more. They should have done more. You earned more than they should have. Opened more doors, supported you more, got behind you, and just because you're proven. And I still think that in any other sport, football, college is a stomping ground. It's a place to say, okay, you're ready for the pros, and we're going to invest in you. You know what I mean? And they do it. And I don't think that culture should be overlooked. I think it's a.
Well, I think the fine line.
Help me out here.
I think the fine line is exactly what Nicole said about when Nicole felt that she was on a timeline with these wild cards. I think that should be across the board. That's what
Right,
I think Nicole
right.
is saying.
Right.
The timeline is not there for everyone the same.
Right.
Some
Yeah.
people are given 5 years timelines, and I agree. They don't deserve that.
5 years.
Some people are given 1 year.
It's so frustrating because exactly what you're saying, like, sports are kind of supposed to be this like pure meritocracy, which is like you earn your spot by working hard and there's no way around it. But when you start getting into these like wild cards, those are inherently
When you
unearned.
start getting into people
But
making these
exactly.
decisions.
It just brings like all of this like toxic politics into the sport that honestly end up being a distraction for most players. There's so much BS around, oh, that girl got the wild card, it should have been mine. No, it shouldn't have. Like, nobody has earned that, right?
Exactly.
Like, because you literally have not earned it. That's why you need a wild card. Now, there are like certain exceptions to this. If you're like a previous Grand Slam champion and like you're earning that tournament money by being there, like, yes, that's an earned wild card, so to speak.
right.
If you were injured and the USTA is trying to support your comeback, that to me makes sense and is much more in the realm of like earning. But when you start to do this like popularity contest where a bunch of 60-year-old dudes are weighing in
What I
on
would like to have seen
14-year-old
them was
girls,
say, here is a great
It's not
player,
healthy.
let's get behind her, give her the resources that she needs to help her be as successful as she can possibly be.
yeah, I mean, and
about
that's the trap though. Like, what if you invest in the wrong person, and like, when do you pull it? When do you say, oh wow, this person is just sitting on that and they're actually like not meeting their full potential or showing us that they're gonna make it, right? So like, I think these are all fundamentally like massive challenges that always make USTA into the bad guy. I think the bad guy is honestly like the structure that you can get free ride into these tournaments, and then it creates like impossible politics to manage.
Well, let me ask you this, because one of the biggest topics right now, if you watch social media, and I've been watching social media now, has been, there's a group of people out there that are saying that Venus, for instance, is getting these wild cards and taking it away from promising younger.
Saw Michael Joyce's
Yeah,
post on that.
exactly, right?
Savage.
Hey,
went for
and
it.
there's a lot of support
Yeah.
from what I've read, right? They're saying that she is taking wild cards away from promising younger Americans.
But
And-
again, like, so
isn't her
entitled.
reputation-
But Go ahead.
Yeah, that's such an entitled perspective, in my opinion. It's like, yeah, you're taking it away only because, like, the premise of, like, a wild card exists. But, like, if a tournament wants to make money because they can get Venus Williams to come to the tournament, that is good for tennis.
Yes.
And not
Also,
to mention,
she's a legend.
And not to mention,
I mean, you could play 20 years in the NFL and nobody's looking at you if you're a veteran saying you're taking a rookie spot.
oh no, they are.
They are saying
do
that, but
complain.
I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, they do complain. They've been saying Tom Brady
Yeah.
should have stopped 2 years ago. They're saying Aaron Rodgers should stop. And these guys have earned
Yeah.
what they're doing.
Of course.
But again, but look at Venus anyway. In the last 2 tournaments, Cincinnati and Montreal, she beat 2 top 20 players. So where's the argument, right? I mean, okay, she's taking a wild card. They're saying she should actually.
Nicole, if they take the wild cards away altogether, we wouldn't have this issue.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not going to happen, right? We live in a world where it exists for those type of, those like caveats that I'm talking about, coming back from injury. Caroline Wozniacki, great example, right? That's not even an American that's getting a wild card into the U.S. Open because it's great for business, right?
Former number 1.
Which is then downstream better for the players. USTA has more funding, all of that sort of thing. I think maybe the USTA structure could do more in terms of like funding player development better when the US Open is doing better, because that doesn't seem to always happen. Like it happens to some degree or another, but I don't know. It just never seemed to be that like, oh, revenue is up at the U.S. Open and we're really feeling that in player development and there are so many resources going into American players.
Nicole, can I pick your brain and ask you a question?
But wait, let me say something. That's not even happening anymore like it used to, right? Because
they're on fixed budgets.
They
right?
just cut it in half.
Yeah.
They just cut the player development budget in half in this year. They cut it and then they cut it again.
I mean, they haven't had that much validation for their structure. I mean, like, who's come out of player development that's like won a Grand Slam, versus what would the organic rate of U.S. players winning slams be?
Yeah, I don't.
Sloane
know.
Sloane won U.S. Open, right?
Sloane won U.S. Open.
Yeah, so that's
Keys
one.
was several finals.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's like so outside the scope of what would have happened without USTA player development, right? Like we had Serena and Venus before all that circus was going on, right?
Yeah.
So.
You had a child, so as an athlete, how do you feel as an athlete? Do you feel like, oh, I can get my body back in shape and come back and compete? And for a woman, how is that? I mean, if we think
that's a good question.
No, that's a great question.
Okay.
That's a beast.
Because I saw your post.
Awesome.
I saw your post the other day watching Caroline Wozniacki with your daughter.
Yeah.
In front. Does it give you a little itch? I can get back there. What?
Yeah, I might have had like a dream 2 days later where I was playing the U.S. Open and I was like, no, calm down. That's a very real. So I can only speak to my experience, but I found the experience of pregnancy and postpartum extremely hard on my body. It was very uncomfortable, especially in the later months for me. I had a lot of like back and rib pain, all this like core and pelvic floor related stuff that makes it just really hard to come back to like running, lifting weights, doing just like really basic stuff. So I can't even imagine how long it would have taken. Probably like, I would say at least a year postpartum with the best possible team to get back to like a place where I could consider going to a challenger. And I actually commented on a Tennis Channel post the other day that was talking about Svitolina, because I think she was back on the court like 2 months after giving birth. And I was like, what? Like, I'm pretty sure I would have still felt like another baby was going to fall out if I got on the tennis court like within 6 months. So I think it's just really different for everyone. But regardless, it's such a feat.
Was it a challenge for you as an athlete, your pregnancy?
Yeah, it was a challenge both in good ways and bad ways. Like I really relished the opportunity to find ways to stay fit and active. And that's been kind of like a surprising part of my like after tennis journey is like how obsessed with like exercise, working out I've been, because I always kind of had this concept that I was like going to be done with tennis and like, I don't know, drinking a bunch of beer and hanging out on the couch, and it's just not been like that. Like, I really need it for myself. But it was discouraging at times, like especially postpartum. I was just like, wow, I'm having so much hip pain. I'm having all this like core instability. It's really hard for me to get back to running, which I really love. It took me like almost a year to get back to a pace that I was like comfortable with. But you know, it's part of being a woman.
Okay, so we're back on Alotta Racket podcast here, and with just an unbelievable guest that we have today, Nicole Gibbs. Brody.
Powerhouse at Stanford.
Yes, for sure. Stanford, so a successful career and college career at Stanford, and couldn't have been at a better place. How did you use your college tennis to prepare you for professional? Because I know you always wanted to play professional tennis. How did you use that to prepare you?
So a couple things. Match play. That's number one. You're just getting so match tough when you're in college. You're getting way more matches than you would be getting out on the pro tour, losing in first and second rounds. That was always really hard for me to build back that momentum when you lost it on tour. But that was something that was like really easy to kind of like hit the reset button, play a more regional tournament in college. You kind of almost know that you're going to get a round or two that you can play into. So that was the first thing. The second thing was really leaning into the wisdom of my college coach, Lily Faroud, who was just so storied and had watched so many players transition from college to pro, kind of like knew what it was going to take from me. And, you know, with Lily, you have to be really proactive. She's not going to, you know, pull you aside and be like, let's do lessons. You have to be like, hey, Lily, I want these extra hours, and take the initiative. So I thought all of those things prepped me really well for the tour when it was a little more hands-off.
You know what, I looking back on retrospect too, I felt I peaked in college because of the team and camaraderie, you know, and that team, you know, rooting you on. The whole school, I had 37,000 students rooting me, you know, so if you can't, you better be glad, you know.
Shout out to San Diego State.
Yeah, you better be glad Ohio State didn't come up in there. You came down
64,000.
and got your butt kicked too. But, you know, I just, you know, and I had that, right? You have all those things, and that makes a huge, you know, I didn't think about it, but that element was gone.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was like your whole security blanket.
I never thought about it then, you know, and you know, and I had no one to give me that type of understanding of that type of transition and the energy that you left behind with your teammates and fan rooting you on to victory, you know. Yeah,
I mean, on both ends of competition. Like, I remember, you know, memories from certainly leading up to events. Like, this is a ridiculous one, but me and Christiane, my freshman year, were playing 3 and 4 on the team, and that was for us like most matches were kind of a cakewalk. And so we had one match where the night before we were like, all right, we're both going to pound a pint of Ben & Jerry's and see if we can make it through tomorrow. And it was like at indoors or whatever. So, you know, we just had this like kind of like fun, keeping it light energy where you were being silly, playful, still very competitive, but you had this like security blanket of like fun and like emotional support.
When did it change when you turned pro? When did you realize?
Literally the second I drove off of campus. Like, I was like, oh shoot, like there's no one here, you know? And like those losses, I mean, there was always like, you know, when you lost with the team, you were out at a bar 2 hours later, taking shots, like, you know, kind of like supporting each other, like emotionally, and not the healthiest way to cope, but it was at least like emotionally.
No, it's a great way to cope.
You're leaving it behind. You're just like going into a different energy space. And I really lost that on tour because taking shots alone doesn't quite hit the same.
Boy, I just saved tons of money on therapy with that one right here. That's absolutely correct. And the audience hear that. If you going through that, you know, one of the biggest things about frustration is not having an understanding of what you're going through in the moment.
Of course.
You know, and you just, a lot of clarity came to me right now in terms of, that emotional difference being, you're alone, you're by yourself, literally.
Yeah. And the weight of everything is on you. It was so
Yeah.
evenly distributed before, and now it's all about you all the time.
Great transition, though.
Well, you obviously had a great transition. You left Stanford in 2013. By 2014, you're at the U.S. Open, and did you have to qualify that year, or did you get a wild card in 2014?
I want to say that maybe I won the wild card through the tournament playoff that year.
Yeah, and
I'm not
speaking of
sure.
wild card, there's
Fact
another
check me
way
on it.
the USTA actually allows you to get a wild card too. You can win a wild card like playoff
Through
kind of thing.
challengers, essentially. They'll give you 3 challengers, and whoever wins the most points in 2 out of the 3
Right.
then gets the wild card. So I'm pretty sure I won a $50,000 in Yakima, Washington,
Okay.
and I think quartered at another event in the 3, and so that gave me the wild card that year.
Awesome. So you earned that, and by the U.S. Open by September, you beat the 23rd seed Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, which was a great win.
Let's go back a minute.
Great
Let's give a
win.
shout out to your athletic training facility, because obviously you had some nagging. I mean, all that winning, you had to endure some little injuries.
Yeah, I think the wheels were falling off at kind of all times in my career, always. I was a very physical player, and I was very small, so I was making up for, body mass by working really hard per square pound or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I think that was a great resource, but I also think college tennis matches were so much less physically demanding that it was like night and day.
Wow.
When I got on tour, it was like, oh shoot, every single match is going to take everything I have physically. So that was a hard transition.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so you second round you beat the number 23 seed Pavlyuchenkova, who's an awesome player. Before you finally lost to Panetta.
The big lefty?
She's a righty.
She's righty, right?
She's a righty. Yeah.
I beat Caroline Garcia in the first round.
Wow.
Huge.
So
It's a pretty good back-to-back.
same birth year though. Same birth year.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at that point, you're in the third round U.S. Open. You just had a great win, had 2 great wins, and now you lose to Panetta. Is that the year she won it? No.
I think she quartered that year, and then the next year she finaled.
She won it.
She beat Vinci in the finals?
Yeah,
Okay.
then she in the finals.
Yeah.
How did you feel at that point? Did you feel like, I'm here, I've made it? How did you feel?
You know what's so crazy, and this is just a theme that came up over and over and over again in my career, is yes, the moments of winning those matches were incredible. You get this like massive adrenaline rush. You feel like really happy. But the week is ending in a loss. And I had a really hard time with that. It would take a full week for me to like look back and say, wow, like that was actually like an awesome body of work there. Like I should be proud of that because, yes, I had back-to-back wins over top 50 players or whatever it was. And that was the first time in my career, but I lost 2-0 on center court to Panetta, and that hurt. I was like, that's embarrassing. I did not show up. My body was falling apart. You know, again, like with hindsight 2020, you can be like, hello, the whole tournament. But in that moment, it was just so hard for me to like take myself out of like the pain of like the losses.
You are with Roger.
No.
Because he talks players through stuff like
He's
that.
really, really good
very
at that.
good
And
at-
that's
Roger Federer?
that is why I got to my career high when I was working with this
he's
guy.
very, very good at that.
Yeah.
Did you hear her process? She did all of this great stuff, but she was really focused on the loss
Right.
versus really the...
A lot of times when that happens, it's when you disconnect from your purpose. If you know your purpose, the wins are the wins, the losses are the losses, and you keep going. Mm-hmm. Because your purpose is so much deeper than just winning and losing. Mm-hmm. It's what you're connecting it to. And we've talked about this several times on our podcast. When you can connect your purpose, you never lose. Because it's always a stepping stone to gain your purpose. Mm-hmm. So I think even when I first met Nicole, you know, not when I first met her, when Nicole called me up, after a U.S. Open loss, ironically, like in 215 or something like that, 216 actually. And she was feeling pretty down. And I remember Nicole coming with rackets that first day. I don't know if you remember this. And I said, wait. I think we watched some videos. And I said, look at what you're doing. And I had her answer her own questions. Why am I doing this? And I said, I don't know. That's a question you have to ask. But this is what we're going to attack. This is what we have to work on, right? And also we got to connect it to, why are we really playing? Why are you really out here playing, Nicole? Right? Because if it's just on winning and losing, you're going to feel like every day you lose. It's got to be deeper than that. And one of my goals with Nicole was to get her to connect with her purpose. Now, we worked, I think, for 2 weeks, and she went to a challenger, and she was up 5-3 in the third or something in one match and lost. And that must have hurt again, because you called me on the phone. And a month later, she was connecting some stuff. She says, but you know, I feel good. I feel okay. I feel like I'm headed in the right direction, though. I feel like I'm doing some good stuff. And then she was going to play a WTA in San Diego. And we went down there, finals. And I could see the growth even in those 3 months in Nicole. She was starting to connect some stuff. And again, Nicole, you can go on from there. I mean, it just spoke for itself. I didn't have to change a tennis player. It was just connecting her to something a little deeper than winning and losing. I didn't have to really deal with money like some players with Nicole. It wasn't about the money for Nicole. She wanted to win. She wanted to accomplish some stuff. I just had to rearrange it a little bit. And once we did that, man, she was on a mission. I mean, we can talk about, she got to the final. I mean, you could talk about how was it for you when we connected
You had that
going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what Roger does that's so unique is just, he's almost like violently positive with you to the point where it's hard to be negative with yourself.
What do you mean violently positive?
Just, it's relentless in this really awesome and beautiful way. Cause as athletes, we're not exposed to that mentality a lot. It's like, you're only as good as your last win, and you're as bad as your last loss. And certainly, for all of the really, really great things that my dad did, he was very tough on me about the losses. And that showed up, long term in my career, because I had this really, really heavy curtain of just anxiety and dread when I would lose matches, thinking maybe this is it, maybe I'm not good enough. I would just go immediately to this place of self-doubt. And Roger was really good at not allowing me to go there, and keeping me really focused on a vision of myself that would play better tennis, whether that was literally the type of shots I was hitting, the patterns I was playing, or a greater sense of self. What do you want your career to be about? What do you want to be remembered for? And I thought that was really empowering at a time in my life when I really needed that. I had a lot of "what have you done for me lately?" Coaching setups, or just the aura of the USTA, you're not getting the wild card if you haven't won in the last X many weeks or whatever it is. And this was just a breath of fresh air. And he really got me to view myself as a player very, very differently than anyone else had been able to.
Did you seek out Roger to coach
Sure
you?
did. Yeah, he was the ticket, man.
Really?
I was always admiring his work with Sloane, and I was I was very envious of that coaching relationship. Even though I, obviously had some great coaches of my own
That
prior to
started
that.
in Carson.
Yeah. And I always just enjoyed my time working with him, even when I was, the sparring partner for Sloane. I just liked those workauts.
Smart.
And I really was.
Those Saturday
I was
mornings.
the hitting partner.
Was he the type of coach that, of course, he had Sloane, but was he invested in you and other players that are around in that way? Because coaches, this is my horse.
Well, they were
Yeah.
different classes.
I mean, no, we were the same year.
class.
No, I think
Shabazz, those guys, you knew Shabazz? They're older.
Older.
Way older.
Yeah, it came across he was definitely like her guy, but he's always approachable and like wants everyone to have fun on the tennis court.
Right.
And like that, you just read that, and like maybe I wasn't feeling that down on my court. We were suffering down there. And so yeah, I definitely jumped at the opportunity. I think actually initially I was
learned all that from me.
Sure did.
Initially, I was actually really surprised that he would like want to work with me. That was very exciting to me.
How long did it take you to get him? I mean, you said you always wanted to, but at what point did you reach out to him?
I'm trying to think who I was working with before that.
You're at the U.S. Open. I get a text from Sam Duval.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, are you free? I got a player.
I think what happened is I had been using communal USTA coaching resources and had, for one reason or another become like kind of disillusioned with that and been like, hey, this is my time to really push. If I want to like get to the best I'm gonna get in my career, it's time for me to personally invest resources so I have someone devoted to me.
Right.
And again, first name on the list, and it just worked out that I think you had just wound down with
I had two juniors.
one after.
I had two juniors.
Yeah.
And we had set out 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Remember? Something like that.
Yeah, it was.
And she took advantage of those 12 weeks.
Yeah.
She did well in those 12 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But see, Nicole, you were labeled prior to that, because I didn't see it at all, but you were labeled this difficult player to work with. A lot of coaches would always say that. Well, stubborn.
Talk back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Let's
and
talk about that.
Eventually it showed up in our coaching relationship too, but I think, we had probably a really good year or so where 2 years where I was not so much in that like combative state. I think it's almost like a fear state when I'm not feeling supported, that I tend to get very defensive, right? Because I'm like, at the end of the day, it always ends up that I'm kind of the one fending alone, and like, maybe this person's not going to be there in like 3-4 months. Like I had never had like a really continuous coaching relationship other than the one with my dad, which was, fraught with all these dynamics, and so I think I would get to this place where I would start losing and I would be like, that person is going to abandon ship, like leave. And then all of a sudden I'm starting to like, shift my mindset away from them, and I'm like, okay, how do I take care of myself? Because that's where this is going to end up, right? And if I'm taking your coaching advice that maybe I don't agree with in this moment, that's one thing. If I'm like working towards like a greater vision that we both have for my tennis, but when it's like, okay, this might be on the outs or whatever, then I start like protecting my vision of my tennis. And
So does that become a trust issue because
yes,
you're just not sure?
Yes.
You're not sure what's going to happen. As far as you being who you are, the person that you are, and then you seeing that, how'd you help her do that?
Well, I just think the most important thing is to get them to, like you say, trust you.
Right.
Our biggest thing was to get Nicole to trust me. And it started from day one, actually, with, look, this is the vision I see you as a player. If we can't get here, it may not work. And that built, and Nicole took steps towards that. And that trust came. And so much that Nicole opened up to me with a lot of stuff. I mean, hey, Nicole, but what was interesting with Nicole was she would always come back with stronger. Like before slams, if you don't mind me saying, Nicole would have these like, how would you call it? Anxiety attacks. Is that
meltdown?
Always before the slams. This is real. Like
it was like 2 weeks before, like clockwork.
Like a week to 2 weeks before, she would have these meltdowns, and I'd be like, Nicole, what the hell was going on, man? What are you doing? Where you?
Of what? Physical manifestations of built-up anxiety. Expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you start playing terrible, and then that feeds on itself.
Exactly.
And I have a broken racket, and I'm crying on the side of the court. It was the full thing.
And then we would have to talk. Well, I don't mind talking and facing it. Let's face it. Let's get it out. which was always great for Nicole, because I think what most coaches would do would not face it with Nicole, right? They don't want to face that.
Can confirm.
Drama.
Yeah, I was the drama.
But they don't want to face it.
Yeah.
They want to say, man, let her be what she want to do. She'll come around, but it's not that easy, right? I mean, we've all been there.
Yeah.
You know, we've all wanted to quit at some point or whatever in different ways, and it's like, you got to face it.
You validated her.
Of course, I believed in Nicole I knew Nicole from 14, 13 years old.
Yeah.
And Nicole was always, I used to hear juniors talk. I said this before in another show. How do you know when a player has it? You know, they talk about talent ID or whatever, and you just listen to other players. And exactly how they talk about the fear of playing that person, that's that's the person I want to see. And so these girls, including Sloane, because she dominated Sloane up until 15 or 16 years old, and Christina McHale and Christiane, they would always be, that girl, man, you play, she's a fighter, she's, be ready to work, man. She don't give nothing away. That's the player gets something and wants something. Hates to lose. More than she loves to win. Hates to freaking lose. That person will never quit. So I knew that about Nicole. But then I saw Nicole daily at Carson. Whether it was with, as she said, a hitting partner for Sloane and stuff, or even in the after-school program, because she went to regular school, you would know, everybody's like, you would put kids against Nicole on other courts and stuff, and they'd be like, why do I got to play Nicole? All the guys would be like, why do I got to play Nicole? You know there's something about this girl.
Right. And
then I've seen her, and I've seen what she could do. And so I was like, this girl got something. So when I got the call initially, I was like, yeah, it's a great timing. I'm free. I can make it work. Let's do it. And so it was just a matter of building that trust, getting Nicole to understand the vision I had seen for her. I didn't think she was. Once we got there, though, she was not difficult. I don't understand all of that so much, because even afterwards we spoke, and you were like, "Oh my God!" You called me up even afterwards. You were like, "What are these coaches thinking? They're telling me this, they're telling me that." And I could see her frustration. Well, Nicole ain't gonna buy into that. She's very brilliant, and she knows the game of tennis. So.
What'd you play with the Pure Drive?
I played Wilson, I was like on the Clash at the end, but
The Clash?
I don't know. Man.
Well, we had to switch that one racket first and foremost.
Yeah, you hated that thing.
Oh my God.
Trampoline.
Oh,
I
geez.
called it the trampoline. I don't know. It was like a big, it looked like a snowshoe.
Every time
Like
Nicole
a
come off the
Kmart
match,
racket.
every time she came off the match, my wrists, my back, my shoulder. I'm like, but look at this thing is like freaking feather.
It was like an off the shelf junior racket, basically. It wasn't, but
But she had to
Listen,
work
don't
so
get mad at me
hard.
for saying
She had to work so hard with this racket. I was like, no wonder you're feeling this stuff.
Weight in the racket,
Well, what we eventually did was get Wilson to fly her out there to Chicago and test. They tested everything.
You know what's so wild? No coach that I had ever worked with would have engaged with me on my equipment. They're like, yeah, you could try something new. It was never really that dynamic. And this guy was just obsessed with it. And it felt so professional on a way that my other coaching relationships had great merits to them. There's a whole slew of people that I'm very grateful to.
I knew if he was because when you travel, sometime, particularly back in the day, the stringers weren't consistent, right?
Right.
All over the world.
Still can be that way.
Yeah, you got to test it.
And boy, I knew when he wouldn't do well in the tournament, because boy, I'd have to get a racket restrung 2 or 3 times, and we were in Copenhagen, and it was just we couldn't get those rackets. We couldn't get that string job. It was only 2 times, and we couldn't get. And I know how important that is. You got to have your feel.
My dad had always been obsessed with my equipment, and I had not since had a coach that was like invested in getting that right for me. So that was something that really excited me about like the partnership too. I was just like, wow, I'm getting input on all different types of planes. Like I'm getting emotional support that I'm not totally accustomed through like, USTA coaching relationships, getting, and all this equipment support, so professional in terms of like taking the burden off of me for scheduling practice, like basic stuff, basic stuff that you would think would be kind of like commonplace, but it's really not. Like the details are not often taken care of.
So Nicole got Wilson you can talk about that, to go to Chicago.
Yeah, that was a really cool experience. I got to go to Chicago and like demo all these rackets, and the expert there gave me the feedback on how my racket should be balanced for the type of spins that I want to use, and my weight and all of the sort of stuff. And it was just fascinating. I had never experienced anything.
And the minute she came back and said, "Hey, he wants me to try these rackets. He told me to tell you these strings and the tension and blah blah." And as soon as I felt it, like, nah, this feels like a racket. This feels like a weapon, Nicole. And right away, because we had to try several rackets. Remember, everyone came. This is the racket, and oh my God, she got the first day we hit, I was like, that's the ball you need.
Right.
And she didn't have to work as hard.
Yes, brother.
And it just was so much better,
So Roger, my hat's off to you. Because, I'm listening to Nicole talk about some coaches saying she's difficult. But, it's just like relationships. Let's say my wife, for instance, she's maybe having a meltdown. She's going through what she's going through. I can't shut her off. I have to be able to listen. I have to validate how she feels, and then we can do something about it. But I have to listen. And she trusts me on that now. But, that's learned. But for you, as a coach, to have that, and for her to have the opportunity to do that, that's beautiful. That's good.
Well,
that's great.
Can I throw a little footnote in there? My wife's got her foot so far up my. I'm just saying, I'm getting comfortable with it. You know the saying, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I gotta sign. I ain't gonna say sign. This is deep up in my.
But listen, Nicole is such a professional, which is what I respect. And she's very respected on the tour, by the way. We talk about the rackets. Then there's, Nicole was always trying things to get better, which I admired actually with Nicole. And in fact, I learned a lot from Nicole. She doesn't even know how much I learned about her. But let's talk about your dieting. Nicole tried everything, and the team would try it too, right? Let's talk about the vegan.
Oh man.
What?
Okay, so here's what I would not recommend, and that is trying out a vegan diet in China.
In China.
It wasn't bad.
We were on the Asian swing, and I decided that I was like Djokovic, Tom Brady, like all of these athletes are going plant-based. I'm gonna try it. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea in like the place where I had the least control over what options I had. I ate like a metric ton of white rice like while I was there. It was like not the optimal.
And her team.
Yeah.
We would have to go with Nicole. We went all over. Every night we would go to a new vegan place.
There was actually
some was good though.
Amazing vegan restaurant in Beijing.
Yeah, we got a few
that
good
place
ones.
Was fire. Yeah,
we found a few good
ones. It happens. It exists, but it was.
Diet of the god Ganesh.
Let's say the vegan diet did not last. That was an 8-week experiment, and I am now safely landed in pescatarian. I eat fish.
Yeah, but then we went into this diet, right? Which was great, man. And we had the team. We had teamwork on this. We would rent Airbnbs when we would go with Nicole, myself, and her dad, Big Paul, and we had our system out, cut up the veggies. Mm-hmm.
You guys were crushing steak every night. I had to cut you guys off. And
They were
you guys
cutting
are gonna. I was like, you guys
Steak
are
or
gonna drop
chicken,
dead.
and then Paul would fry it up and mix it up. Oh man, we had our routine though. Those were good though.
It was fun.
It was good.
My dad is obsessed with that era. He was like, that was one of the best years.
We had so much fun. I mean, it's amazing. We were just one big happy family.
We were talking about that today when I told him I was coming over here. He was like, man, I've never wanted to throw a backgammon set at someone's head.
Oh my God.
In my life. It was the best year of my life.
Then, let's talk about, Nicole is also known, we would talk about politics, current events, we were in, where were we when, in Vegas, they had that mass shooting.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, we were in Wuhan, maybe?
Oh, okay.
Somewhere where they had the mass shooting, and then a couple of Nicole's friends.
You were in Wuhan, China?
Yeah. And a couple of Nicole's friends were at the concert. And I remember Nicole coming up the locker room and said, "Did you hear what happened in Vegas?" We're like, "No, we were playing backgammon, you know?" And she's like, "Oh my God." And then Lauren from England was there.
Oh, right.
She was there, so everybody was concerned.
Yeah, Laura Robson.
Laura
right?
Robinson, was concerned because she was just posting from there.
Wow, your memory is great.
And so I don't think anyone took that more serious than Nicole. And we never missed any reports on TV. Again, with politics, that was a big, because this girl right here, man, let me tell you, this girl right here is unbelievable politics. And even with little player injuries, Nicole is very concerned, and I think that's to be admired, because she's the kind of person that really cares about even her colleagues. Most people be like, screw that, I hope I draw that person, right? No, Nicole is very concerned about those players and always offering to help them and stuff.
So Roger, when you were coaching Nicole, what was your regimen like as far as her physical part of training?
Well, let me say this. Nicole is self-sufficient. Nicole knows what she needs, and you don't have to say anything. Talk about those ice baths, those daily ice baths.
Wow.
I mean, Nicole knew what she had to do.
Crowd
Loved
therapy.
that.
No, Nicole is very self-sufficient. One of the most self-sufficient player, and I think you learned that probably at a young age, like you said, discipline from your dad and so forth.
Yeah, I think I also, not to make light of it, I was so anxious all the time. Like, I had really high anxiety, and I felt if I didn't check every single box, like, that was what was going to come to get me in my next match. So I feel like I just had this, like, near paranoia level of, like, practice has to be exactly this long, the ice bath has to be exactly this long, my prep has to be exactly like this, I have to spend this much time with the athletic trainer, making myself feel better. And I think I just lived with that anxiety a lot, and that was the way I channeled it, was through hard work and discipline, which, of all the coping mechanisms, that's probably, one of the better ways to net out, but it was definitely me acting on that sense of anxiety and fear, that if I didn't check all the boxes, something was like going to go sideways.
If you didn't have that anxiety, would you have been the player that you are now?
No,
So
I think,
do we call that anxiety?
yeah, I don't know. It's so tough because I think about this all the time because, what Roger was saying about me, the fact that like people feared playing me, that was because I would do virtually anything to not lose a match, short of cheating. Cheating was never for me. It was like it had to be honest. But I just had this like burning. It can't be described as anything but extreme fear of loss. I just like could not wrap my head around how bad I was going to feel if I lost the match, and so I was willing to do anything in that moment
You know what
to
happens? We create this from being in sports at an early age. We develop more heightened senses than a normal person, and it turns out to be that third eye. And you just don't recognize that you have that third eye, and you translate all that energy and all of that into anxiety and stress. But if you buy into it and relax and absorb that and understand that energy, it's just that you've been gifted that third eye.
Yeah. What
Did I kind of say to clean that up a little, Roger? What am I trying to say?
There's a keen sense that you have inside of you that can bring awareness.
Yes.
Nicole had that.
Yeah.
A lot of players I coached did not have that. She definitely did.
Stress and anxiety is innate, I believe. And, the people that deal with it better have tools and mechanisms. So first of all, how did you, first of all, we have to recognize that the stress and anxiety is upon us, right? Or even that it's coming upon us. And so what tools did you and Roger work with to counter that stress and anxiety?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things and why, I was my most successful on tour when I was working with Roger was just that sense of like stability and comfort. He was just so positive, and it didn't give me that opportunity to really like sink into my losses and like sink into that self-defeat as much as I normally did, which like fueled the anxiety about, okay, next week if I don't win my first round, then, I would get into these cycles, and he would kind of disrupt those for me. So he was a huge asset for me at the time. Also, I'll be honest, I had severe insomnia on tour, and I did use medication on occasion because I would not have slept.
Well, let's say that you use medication to help your situation. There you go.
So I was, there were nights on tour, if I had a big match the next day, I literally would not sleep the night before. And so, I had spoken to a psychiatrist and had, an emergency lever to pull on nights where I could feel that coming on. I'm like, I just need to sleep.
That's interesting you said that, because from our perspective, we looked at that as, man, I'm so excited I can't sleep. So we didn't look at it as a form of stress. We looked at it in a positive way, and that's what. He's a gamer, right? He'll stay up all night playing backgammon, cards.
I think the difference is when it's severe anxiety, it does not feel positive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can tell. You're like, oh, this is not good.
And it affects different people differently too.
Yeah.
And different people need to manage it. Most importantly, differently. There's no one way to fix it.
Yeah.
No one way to fix it. But I want to get into one thing here while we're on this. There was something you wrote on Facebook about your journey that included 15. You were sitting in the airport, and you wrote this thing on Facebook about your journey that included 15 first-round losses and 8 broken rackets, 4 coaches, and a ranking that plummeted from 84 to 154. And you said you cried and you swore you would quit tennis for about 20 times. And then you wrote this other quote, though, to back it up, which I thought was great. You said, ever tried, ever failed, no matter what, try again. Fail again, fail better. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, that was right after we started working together. And again, I kind of hit rock bottom in the middle of that season when I reached out to you. And that's when I was like, I really need a change and I need to invest in myself. And what you're seeing there is like the culmination of a year of extreme frustration, but also we had started putting together the building blocks for, a brighter next year. And I was really feeling that. I was like, wow, like all of this failure has almost like precipitated this like new feeling of like success and excitement for next year. And how like hopeful is that you can have like the worst season of your career and you can still be like so excited for next year and feel like you're actually building to something really exciting. And in fact, we were like that next year was my career high ranking. So that was like a really unique turning point.
Now, there's a lot of, you talked about medication earlier. There's a lot of, players on medication on the tour, suffering from either anxiety, depression, whatever. I know you know some players, you've probably spoke to some players, you've helped some players. I remember a few times we were practicing with some of these top players and was going through it. I remember this one player in particular that's back now in the top 20. But she was really hurting when we were in Mexico. Do you remember that? And you were a good friend to her, and she was like ready to quit tennis. And then we saw in Europe.
You'll have to tell me after. I can't pull it up.
But let's talk a little bit about depression that can happen from tennis. There's anxiety, of course. There's depression. There's a lot of medication towards depression, and there's different kinds of medications, obviously. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of like all the mental health challenges that you can have on tour, I pretty much had them all. Not actually, but, you know, depression, anxiety, kind of just like a mishmash of really challenging like mental states that I was dealing with while I was on tour. And not to make like extreme light of it, but I often quote myself now saying that I thought I had a mental health disorder when I was playing tennis, but actually tennis was the mental health disorder. Because honestly, since then, I've felt so great. I've been like in this like consistent routine. My like day doesn't hinge on things that I can't control. Like it's just so, it's a test, and it is something that can like, you know, you can gain like so much wisdom from having to like go through those ups and downs constantly. But for me personally, it was just devastating psychologically. I was like, I felt like I never had security. I was never quite where I wanted to be. I felt like I was constantly checking in with how other people were perceiving me, and that was like impacting my sense of self, right? I'm like, the USTA doesn't think I'm good enough. They're not supporting me. My peers like can see that I'm practicing badly. They're probably gonna, you know, see blood in the water if they see me in the draw. Like there was just this kind of constant like chatter that now has like gone really quiet for me, and I'm just like, wow, like I can actually like go through a week without feeling, you know, maybe not feeling the emotional highs that I was feeling, but it's like almost like getting out of a bad relationship where you're just like going high to low, high to low, high to low, high to low, and then finding like the stable partner who's just going to keep you right in the middle. And for whatever reason, that's really been motherhood for me, is just like, you know, this transition to like, it's like I'm no longer like the protagonist in my story, and it's not all about me in this like really, really freeing way. And I can just be like, you know, the support in someone else's story.
That's beautiful, because, and you said something very interesting too when you said, you know, the anxiety or the depression comes about with things that you don't have control of. And we've talked about that a million times on our podcast. When you get caught up in things you don't have control of, that brings the most anxiety and the most, you almost feel like you're a failure in a lot of ways.
Right.
With things you don't have control of.
So,
but as what I'm hearing is you're more connected to things you can control, and that brings a lot of ease and peace in your life.
Yeah, for sure. And it, you know, it still comes up from time to time. There are going to be things in life that you don't have control over, but I think it's manageable when it comes up in these like shorter bursts, or more like it's more unusual to have these like highs and lows. Whereas on tour, it was every single week. You're kind of almost guaranteed a low, and you're lucky if you get a high. And like, you know, it just kind of beat me down. Like, you know, by the time I retired at 27, I felt like 1,000 years old. I was like, I just like didn't have it in me anymore to like keep putting myself on the line.
When I beat David Lee, we were in the elevator, I said, man, I can't do this shit.
No, you do. You hit that point where you're like, I literally cannot get out of bed to do this again tomorrow. And it was super weird for me, because I actually hit that moment where I was like, I do not want to go on the court to play my match tomorrow. I had never felt that before. No matter how bad I felt on the practice court, I was always like, some part of me, the fighter, would show up and be like, you know, but I could really turn things around today. And I would show up to the match at least with some sense of hope. The night before Indian Wells, I was like, I cannot show up to do my job tomorrow. And then it was canceled for the pandemic. And I was like, if that's not a sign to run and never look back at this sport, I'm not sure you're going to get a stronger signal than that.
No doubt.
I love it. That's why I work with young pups, because I always throw this out there, Nicole. Let's say you made it to the finals of 20 tournaments. That's a great year, isn't it? But you have 20 losses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
See how I normalize?
But if you're not connected again to your purpose,
if you're not getting that good information early on,
that's 20 days of.
Now you don't have abandonment. You have stability now because you got your hubby. Shout out to your hubby. He's a really super dude. I know he's got a lot of patience. He's a good brother.
Sure
and
does.
you both bring a lot to it. And then you have your beautiful. So I was waiting for that transition in your conversation,
Yeah.
how motherhood
Yes.
and family stabilized you.
Jack and Sky.
Yeah.
Super duper, man. That's really good stuff.
Yeah.
How has it changed your life?
Oh man, I mean, Jack has been such an enormous presence. You know, I like to think, Roger would agree with the assessment that he was one of the really good partners on tour.
Absolutely.
Where he was just always so relentlessly supportive. Would watch me sacrifice all of this, like be on the road all the time, never a complaint. Like, just wanted me to go and, do what I was going to do and be as successful as I possibly could be. At great personal sacrifice, like his life partner was like gone half of the year. Maybe that was great. I don't know. Maybe he's like, can you go back? I don't know. But he was just an enormous, calming presence, and talk about like no sense of abandonment. He's just always been like right there with me and made me feel like I had a really safe place to come home to, which I think actually at the end of my career, I think that took the edge out. From my like desperation a little bit. I was like, oh, someone's gonna like love me no matter what, like even if I suck, like, and I do think I lost a little bit of that desperate fight in me, which is kind of an irony. It's like I got healthier as a person, and as a result my tennis suffered, and I think as I started to see that, I was like, okay, well, what am I willing to sacrifice to be great at tennis? I don't think me is the answer to that. I don't want to sacrifice myself on the altar of like finding that again. You know what I mean? But that was a really hard decision to confront. That was like a 20-year, labor of love for tennis, to then just be like, hey, I actually need to like put me first. And that meant quitting, which was like a crazy concept.
Did you leave it all on the court?
Oh man.
Is that a concept you had? Was that cliche introduced into you before then? Leave it all on the court, and when you do, no regrets after.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think life ever works exactly like that. I feel like, you can always have regrets about, for instance, I'll put it out there, I think that in retrospect, I wish me and Roger would have
and every
found a
player
way.
he's coached has said that same thing.
Yeah. No, I wish we had like maybe taken more time, like even if it was taken space to then come back, like, which, he knows I was then prepared to do. I was like, hello, come back.
Slinger,
These people are crazy.
You have a blueprint. You got to write your book, man, and set people free, brother.
No, seriously. Yeah. If you're talking about like regrets or things I wish I had done differently, like I think that jumps out.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, that concept, leaving it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you don't look back. Well, you don't have to look back because your future is so bright within your family.
Yeah, no, it is. It is, and it's really cool. My future is so different than what I thought it was going to be, too. I wasn't even sure that motherhood was for me.
I remember those talks.
Oh, man. I was like, Jack, if I get married to Jack, I have to have kids.
Yep.
Like, it was like a fear. I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I have the patience. Right. I don't know.
Why was that a fear?
I think, I had a concept of myself that, he expressed it earlier. A lot of people think I'm difficult. A lot of people think I'm like a little bit thorny. And I'm like, I definitely don't want to give that to a kid. Like I want to, nurture a kid if I'm going to have one. Turns out, like, it's been the most natural thing in the world to me. Mm-hmm. And I've just been, like, blown away by, like, the level of, like, self-esteem that's given me. Mm-hmm. I'm like, whoa, I am, like, so capable of, like, giving love. And, like, that's all I want to do. Call me in 10 years when I have a teenager and make sure I'm still preaching this tune. But it was just, it was a really empowering experience. And it gave me a whole new sense of self.
I'm at peace because I have someone that loves me.
You said something about a foot up your.
Well, not that one. I have.
You were talking about something about a foot.
Yeah,
I don't know if a foot up your this piece. You gotta elaborate on that, Troy.
I don't want to get the other foot up my ass. No, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, so I'm always thinking I'm finna punch out. So, But for the first time, I was at peace because I knew that, my daughter was going to make everything okay. And I'm so at peace now because I know I have, I'm dad. I have this enduring identity in another human being's life unconditionally.
Yeah.
And for me, that's all I ever needed, and I've got that. And I told the Lord, I says, I'm at peace, I'm not worried anymore.
Well, speaking of cancer, a few years ago, Nicole went to the dentist and was diagnosed with this rare cancer that I think, according to what I read, only 13 people in the world had been diagnosed with this cancer. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. First of all, that's beautiful and so powerful. And I think these parent-child relationships are really special and transformative in that way. So thank you for sharing that. But yeah, I mean, I had the craziest experience with this because, I had a tumor in the roof of my mouth. It ended up being cancer, but it was eliminated just through surgery alone. And so I almost don't identify as a cancer survivor because I didn't have to go through the chemo, the radiation. I know it gets so much worse than this, but the one thing I can relate to is just the existential dread when you hear that word. You're just you feel, talk about out of control.
Of course.
I mean, you're nowhere near the driver's seat. You're giving all of your trust to a medical professional that you've never met. You're now meeting with a brand new person who you're supposed to trust with your life, and whatever they say is how it's going to be. That was a really huge challenge for me. And, again, I was really fortunate. It was just a surgery. I did have to be on a feeding tube for a month after. So, I lost 15 pounds, and that was mid-season. I was in my head trying to come back for Wimbledon, just manically focusing on the next thing to keep my mind off of, kind of how scary it was for me. But, yeah, it was a sobering experience to have at 26 or however old I was when that was diagnosed.
How did that affect you coming back? Did it have any effect at all? It was just...
So I noticed a couple of things. Yes, I had a fire in my belly immediately after because I was just this is something that I can really prove myself in, come back fast, get strong again. I did notice that that fire still wasn't quite there, and I was if it's not here now, this is starting to get existential for my tennis career. And so I think that almost marked the beginning of the end. If I couldn't turn that into motivation to come back, to prove something, whatever, I was this might be kind of nearing the end of my career.
Oh, that was good. Well, thank God you're good. You've
Yeah.
gotten over it.
So lucky.
Nicole, when you talk about careers, we get in different seasons in our lives. And those seasons are amazing because that's our lives and that's the journey that we're going down. But to remember and to have what you've had, the opportunity to do what you've done is amazing. And it stays with you for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to you.
Shout out to Nicole.
Shout out to you.
Thank you. It's one of those things where you can't appreciate what you're doing while you're doing it, and it takes hindsight to be oh yeah, okay, that was pretty cool. And there were some moments there,
I'm reminding you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just want to give a thank you to Jack, number one. Jack was there and has always been there, and I was for Jack from day one. So Jack is the man. Jack is the man.
What does this Jack look like?
Man, it don't matter what he looks like. He is the man.
He's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
Surfer boy energy.
Is that right?
So
Blonde hair,
positive,
blue
so
eyes.
easy going. Always, he's cool. He's cool. He can get along with anybody.
Can I back this up a little bit? What's up with the football players? Wait.
Oh, they were just the
Because
most
that ain't no nerd.
Yeah,
That ain't no nerd to be rolling with the ball player.
I'm a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
Okay?
come on, Nicole.
And can dance.
Talk to me on this one.
Wait, hold on. And can dance.
Now I'm getting outed.
Like your sister.
What?
Yeah, she dances, man. She can
I don't
dance.
know why he knows that.
You know, I seen you dance.
That's a concern for me.
But go ahead. And Sky. We just gotta give one last shout out to Sky. Your baby girl
Shout
who's
out to
almost
Sky.
2. She's hiding your phone in the refrigerator now and all this stuff or whatever.
No, I'm doing that. I'm forgetting it.
You're forgetting. Is Sky gonna be a tennis player? Because I saw her watching that match.
Man, I really want to say no. I feel like I would push her in any million different directions rather than that. But at the end of the day, like, I do want my kid to do whatever they want to do.
Right.
I do think that would maybe be the hardest thing as a parent for me if she wanted to get into tennis, because I just like, there's so much scar tissue for me there. And that's not to say I'm not grateful. I am so, so grateful to tennis. It has given me literally everything in my life. And like, there's no value you can place on that. Like, I have my family thanks to tennis. I have my education thanks to tennis. I have, my entire life due to tennis. But I just, I want my kid to be happy.
Is she more like you or Jack?
It's hard to tell. She's a daredevil, which is a little bit more like Jack. So like climbing and jumping off of things. Like she does this thing at the playground where she'll like go up to like a high level thing and she'll like pretend she's gonna step off and then laugh at me for like freaking out. And then I'll come over and she'll jump, like whether I'm ready or not. So she's kind of a nut. She's definitely got a little bit of my stubborn streak that's in there, but she's just she's so cool.
A good balance.
Sounds like a crazy thing to say about 1-year-old, but she's just so cool, and she's just entirely her, which is awesome, and I never want that to change.
We'll end with this. We always ask our guests, through every success story, there's been obstacles. There are obstacles. Who would you consider your rock through everything? Or through most things.
Yeah, that's my husband all day, Jack. Yeah, he's been just the most consistent, steady, lovely rock in my life, and he's just made every step of the journey possible, survivable, enjoyable, all of it.
See, I was gonna say Big Paul, and then he passed the torch off to Jack.
Yeah. Paul definitely, he passed the torch. He, he gave me my life, like in more ways than one, literally as my father, but also, just set me up to be on a completely different course than my life otherwise might have been, just hanging out in Northeast Ohio, being a nerd. He had bigger dreams for me, and you gotta give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
Literally everything he dreamed for me and more came true. I would say those two dudes.
In closing, Coach Terry T-dawg Davis, what do you have to say, brother?
Wow. Quite an intelligent woman. Very delightful to talk to. I'm going to go look at footage because I got to see what this is like. I got to see this on the court and the tenacity that you have, that I'm hearing about, Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Awesome. Victory, Coach Victor Troy. In closing, brother.
Who's the greatest running back of all times, and he played for the Cleveland Browns? Don't blow this.
Come on. You gotta know this.
Oh my God.
I ain't answering this. You gotta know this.
Daddy can answer that, but not her.
Phone a friend.
You got a lifeline. You got a lifeline.
Who, Troy? Who?
Shout out to the great Jim Brown.
Jim Brown.
Oh, well, yeah, that was a layup.
All right. Because you said you guys teased Cleveland And their football team.
You know what I mean?
Come on, man, they were a great championship.
They were.
Back in the day. They even had Odell Beckham for a minute, didn't they?
For a minute,
Yes.
yeah, they did.
They had that wild quarterback from Texas.
Yeah, a lot of great
Johnny
players.
Manziel.
Yeah. Did your dad think highly of him when they got him? Is he a Brown fan?
Yeah, but he doesn't go like so hard. He's he's like into it. He turns the game on every time it's on.
Sure. It's not the Cleveland Indians anymore?
No, they changed.
Yeah, I don't know what they're...
I don't know the name.
But all right. No, there's a lot of black tennis in Cleveland. There's the big time black tennis in Cleveland. You know, the ATA is strong in Cleveland. You know, so. And so we played Cincinnati, the ATP Tournament of Champions. Is that co-ed now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It makes it there.
That's a nice stadium. It's nice. It's nice there.
It is?
Yeah. Did people come out and watch you play? Did you enjoy playing in?
She filled the stands.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Where at?
Yeah.
Cincinnati.
Cincy was fun, yeah.
Yeah. Did he run off to the golf course because they give the
Me and Paul.
packages? Yeah.
Me and Paul went a couple days.
Run off to the golf course, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, bye.
Before I speak, Nicole, what is one thing what advice you would give to an aspiring tennis player that could really help them?
I think at the end of the day, this is maybe a little cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. Try not to ride the highs and try not to ride the lows, and just make sure that you're finding the things that make you feel peaceful in life while you're pursuing something as up and down as tennis is, whatever that is. For me, it was having balance in my life, and that was ultimately, I think what saved my career and maybe even life at some point is having that balance. So I think, listening to your gut as well and knowing what's good for you. Listen to the people who have your best interest at heart, but also listen to your intuition.
Don't ride the hype too much and don't follow the naysayers.
Exactly.
Nicole, listen, man, I've always been a fan of yours. From 13 years old, Carson, California. But when I got to really know you, you're more than just a tennis player. And I really got to know you just to listen to you speak on politics. Just how you're concerned about injuries and the welfare of everyone. I mean, Nicole would be out there. You marched doing Black Lives Matter, didn't you? I saw you post on that. Nicole is for everyone. I got to tell you that. She's for everyone. She's for justice. And I've learned that and admired that so much about you through our travels, more than even the tennis. And while you don't think you teach, you are. Even from people who are your coaches or your parents even, because Paul and I talk about this all the time. You have so much to offer and you don't even know it. And we learn so much about you. So I'm heartfelt you even accepting being here, because I know you don't do this. You've been off the radar since family. I really, really appreciate it. We really appreciate it.
Now, buddy.
She's a mom and wife now, but no, I'm sure she's had a million offers. She just doesn't do it.
You ever think about coaching?
No.
Okay.
She'll coach Sky, don't worry.
I respect those who do it in a really big way. The love for the game was not enough there for me to do it. Yeah.
But I really appreciate it. You have a special place here in my heart, and I know you've grown to everyone now in my family, and just really, really thank you for everything. Really appreciate you.
Likewise.
Thank you.